So week 6 of our co-parenting with a narcissist masterclass, and today we're looking at the emotional recovery aspect. And this is really important because whilst you still have those open bleeding wounds from the abuse that you've suffered, you remain vulnerable. You remain vulnerable to all those tactics that we have talked about in previous modules. So healing those wounds will help you to not be as affected by those tactics, which improves your ability to parent and to put those boundaries in place that are necessary for parallel parenting. And so the first thing we're going to look at is something called the drama triangle. Now, some of you may have heard of this, some of you may not. But essentially, it is like a blueprint for dysfunctional relationships. And it's 3 main roles within the triangle, which are abuser, victim, and rescuer. Now, they have different labels sometimes, but those are the 3 core elements. And although on the face of it looks fairly simple, they're the abuser, you're the victim, or maybe you were the rescuer, or maybe services are the rescuers, or maybe the children are victims and you're the rescuer. Actually, it's much more complicated than that. As part of your emotional recovery, it's about you identifying the 3 different sides of that triangle. And when you have played your role, it doesn't have to be in this relationship, but at times we've all been one of those characters. We've all been the victim, we've all been the rescuer, we've all been the abuser. And that doesn't sit comfortably, but actually it is the truth, because when we're scared, when we're feeling insecure, we can become manipulative and controlling. And when you're in a relationship with someone who is constantly moving the dynamics and making you feel insecure, those shadow parts of ourselves can come out. And so looking at yourself through that drama triangle lens is such a brilliant way of identifying, so what's the core that is under that? Why did that trigger me? Why did I behave in that way? And one of the best books that I've done, it's a self-help book, but it's particularly useful for these relationships, is, let me see if I can grab it. Yeah, here we go. I should have got organised. It's been updated since then, but The Betrayal Bonds by Patrick Kearney. It's available on Amazon. As you can see, I've made my own personal notes in that. And it was really helpful for me to be able to look at my life as a whole, not just that relationship, but my whole life, and identify where I've been, those different elements, and what that meant about my beliefs about myself. And when you do that work, what it means is you're able to then step away from playing any of those roles, because it's particularly in the court process, but even with your children, they are trying to triangulate them into, you're welcome, they are trying to triangulate your children into that drama triangle. And so when you understand it, it means you don't get in that triangle. And if you don't get in that, then all those roles cannot be filled, or they cannot be filled by you. And then they might start looking elsewhere. And that's when other people start to notice something isn't quite right. And so you knowing your role helps you protect yourself and then your children from that as well. Because inside every rescuer, I am a self-confessed recovering rescuer, but I have also been the victim and the abuser in different situations. But my primary, my dominant characteristic is that of the rescuer, which we're going to talk about codependency in a minute, and it's linked to that. But inside every rescuer is actually an empowerer, a coach. It's not a coincidence that I am called the nurturing coach, or my business is called the nurturing coach, because that's part of the recovery process. Is rather than being that rescuer of toxic relationships within that triangle, you shift it over to becoming empowering and coach. And that's very, very different. A rescuer is someone who dives in and thinks they know best, and I'll make it all better. And that's because of an internal need within ourselves to be needed and wanted. But actually, when we shift that and we step out of that drama triangle, we heal those beliefs about ourselves and love and relationships, then we're able to empower. And empowering means trusting other people, trusting that, you know, you don't need to tell them what to do. They've got that knowledge within them. You just can be there to support them, to do whatever choices they make. You just support them, you empower them, you coach them. And that is very different from that rescuer dynamic. Again, victim. When you shift from being a victim to taking self-responsibility, to healing yourself, you're not playing that game. When you identify the times that you have been the abuser or the perpetrator, why did I feel the need to try and control that situation? What was I fearful of? Then you heal the fear, and therefore you don't behave in that. So anything that can keep you out of that triangle. So whenever you're being pulled in, and it might not just be with that person, you might start to notice that parents do it, friends do it, work colleagues do it. Just say to yourself, I'm not going into that triangle. I'm going to recognize the role I'm being asked to play in this is, and I'm not going to do that. I could do it because these things are still active within me, but I'm going to focus on healing those bits. And any resistance that comes up for you, any times you think, oh no, I've just got to do it, I've got to be a rescuer, or I'm going to play the victim here, or I'm going to try and control this situation, just remember the triangle. Even if you just remember it in that moment, or even if you remember it half an hour after the event, that awareness will just keep building. And like I say, when you step out of that triangle, they lose their power over you, because that's what they keep doing. They keep pulling you in and wanting you to play one of those roles. And as I say, in court, then that's where that triangle gets distorted, because you will be portrayed as the abuser and they will become either the rescuer or the victim, probably bouncing between the two. And so when you learn, actually, I'm not going to play that role, you get to present differently. You get to present in that from that more healed perspective. So talking about the rescuer, let's move on to codependency, because that kind of goes hand in hand. Codependency originated from like the alcoholics format, the addiction area. And that is why narcissistic abuse and codependency go hand in hand, because we become addicted. And again, it's part of that drama triangle, but we get addicted to the role that we play. We get addicted to the extreme highs and the extreme lows that go on, and we want to fix them. Part of that codependency is also an enabler. We enable those behaviors to continue because we think, or I thought, if I just keep loving them enough, and maybe you feel the same, if I just keep loving them, they've had a really hard childhood, if I just keep showing them, you make excuses for the behavior rather than going, actually, I'm worth more than this, I deserve better than this, I'm going to put a boundary in place here. If they can't respect that boundary, I have a decision to make. But we tend to go, oh, I'll just keep loving them, because that's our codependent element. The fact that if I put a boundary in place, they'll go somewhere else. And I can't bear the thought of that. So we stay in that relationship. We enable that relationship to happen because we play our role. We don't put those boundaries in place because of the fear of what it might mean. That might be uncomfortable for you to hear. You may not recognize it in yourself, but it is a pattern. It is a pattern in these relationships. They need people that will give, and give, because they will take, and take. And if you're codependent, you will give, and give, because that is your rescuer role. That is the role is to, so if we liken the relationship to drugs or to alcohol or to cigarettes, any addiction, then we stay in that cycle because we're addicted to it. We're addicted to that cycle of the high, the makeup, the breakup, when they're brilliant, we work hard to get that back. When they're terrible, We want that, we're chasing our tails, trying to figure out how do we get back that fun time that we had. And that addiction is part of that codependency. We become addicted to that cycle of abuse as much as we become addicted to that person. And our body does. This is an actual physiological response, is our body gets addicted to those stress hormones. They're very addictive in our systems, also very damaging, just like drugs and alcohol. And so we get addicted to cortisol and adrenaline. And so sometimes we create that drama. And again, that plays into that drama triangle, is we can sometimes be the one that's pushing because we want a reaction from them. We want something. And so understanding our own element, our own codependency, will massively help to heal that. And so that we can become independent. And then from independent, we can become interdependent, which is where we know we can rely on other people. We don't rely on them because we're needy or because there's a dependency. We trust in ourselves and we trust in others. But, first step is healing that codependency. And this plays into that trauma bond. So the trauma bond is that addiction. It is that constantly seeking the next high. Those addiction to those chemicals is what we call the trauma bond. Similar to the Stockholm syndrome, where you start to develop a sympathy. As a rescuer, we want to fix this person, and so we get addicted to, without them having a problem, without them being problematic, or without them needing us in some way, we wouldn't have a purpose. That's how it can feel when you're codependent and when you're a rescuer. And so you are addicted to your role within that. You're addicted to being the fixer. And so knowing that this is an addiction means you can treat it in that way. You can let yourself off the hook. When you relapse, you can understand that it takes multiple attempts to break an addiction. You can understand that it's a chemical addiction. So you let yourself off the hook. This isn't about this person. This is about my body just getting rid of these chemicals. And you can also understand that that's really painful. Going cold turkey and overcoming an addiction is not easy. That your body craves those chemicals. And so understanding there's going to be a lot of pain that comes from putting these boundaries in place. But that knowing that means you can put the support in place. It means you can have the awareness that, this hurts, but it's going to be worth it in the end, rather than the lack of awareness, which is, oh my God, this hurts. I need them. I'm craving them, and so I need them. Again, with the drug thing, you don't just quit drugs because when it starts to get tricky, you go, oh my God, I need the fix. I need the drug to get over the pain of coming off the drug. And it's the same with them. To get over the pain of getting over them, you think, I need them. When actually, it's just time. You just got to keep going through that. But what this does create is something called cognitive dissonance, which is when you hold two opposing beliefs at the same time, two or more opposing beliefs at the same time. So, as we just talked about, I know that they're no good for me and I know that it makes me miserable, but God, I miss them. That doesn't make logical sense, doesn't it? That you're miserable when you're with them, that it's very difficult, but I miss them. And that's where your brain plays tricks on you, is how can both of those be true? And as humans, we need to pick one or the other. And often we pick the I love them and we go with that, rather than they cause me a lot of pain and I'm not going to put up with that. We pick one. And for a long time, we just, I'm just going to try and ignore that other part. But when you come out of that, when you make that choice, the other option becomes stronger, then part of that addiction is the other one will start to try and fight to come back up. So you're stuck in this place of this and that, this and that. And it can be hard, And the thing is, with all human beings are good and bad. They have all qualities. It's where they choose to behave that will dictate the overall perception that we have of them. And obviously that's made up of self-perception as well and our own experiences. But cognitive dissonance is about, but they're so funny and they can be so loving and they can be so caring. Why can they also be so cruel? How can they do that? How can they treat me that way? And you bounce between the two, and part of healing is knowing that we are all capable, and that's why the drama triangle work and rescue and recognizing your own behaviors is so powerful, because you see it within you. You see, I am not perfect. I am not 100% good. I make mistakes, so that it allows you to see them as capable of being this good, this funny person, this loving person, but actually also of actually being someone that makes you really miserable, and I don't want to be with that. I deserve better than that. So when you heal yourself, it means you're able to look at the relationship through a better lens that puts you front and center and says, actually, now I'm healing these things, I know that I'm worthy of better than this. It doesn't mean I have to paint them as being the devil, and trust me, we've all been there and done that, but it's acknowledging that they can be both, and that can be hard. But you can't do it at the beginning, because we need, when we're in a stressful situation, we need A or B. We can't be an A and B. But as you work through, you can recognize, you know what, we are complex beings with more than one facet to our character, and sometimes they can be opposing, as they can be within ourselves at times as well. And a lot of this comes down to how we are raised, our relationship with our parents, and ultimately our attachment style. And if we've ended up in these sort of relationships, there will be an element of an insecure attachment in that. I recommend there's lots of online quizzes you can do if you're in the coparenting masterclass monthly subscription. Then I will provide links to some attachment and personality quizzes for you to do to really start to get to know yourself. But understanding your attachment, it means that you can recognize why you have these patterns within relationships. It also means you can work on yourself, reparenting. So you may not be able to go back and get the parenting you need from your parents, probably very unlikely, because they are who they are. And it's not about blame, but it is about you knowing, I didn't get my needs met consistently when I was a kid. I maybe was emotionally neglected at times, hence why I give so much. As a child, I was painted into a role of the carer, and that is why I do this. I have a codependent element to me. So understanding your attachment and your relationship with your parents means that you can then, through therapy, with support, you can start to reparent yourself and heal your own attachment wounds so that you can become a more secure base. And this is why it's so important in this co-parenting course, is because if you have an insecure attachment style yourself, you will interact with your children from an insecure attachment. And so you are creating an insecure attachment within them. And we know children thrive when they have a secure attachment. And so healing your attachment issues, your attachment wounds, helps you to create a secure base for your children. If you don't do that, you're building on rocky ground. Your relationship with your child is built on rocky ground, because through no fault of your own, obviously, you lack the security within yourself. You might be fear-based, you might have anxiety, or you may withdraw. Whatever your attachment style is going to play out in your relationship with your children, because you can't help it. It's your blueprint. It's your blueprint for relationships with others, including your children, especially your children. And so when you heal that, then you create a secure base for your children to develop a secure attachment for themselves, and that secure attachment will prevent them from getting into these sort of relationships in the future. So the work that you do on your own emotional recovery, including your attachment and your nervous system and all those elements, will help to create this secure attachment with your children. But it does start with you. I know I say that a lot, but it is. You are so much more powerful than you believe. So there we go. Thank you to those of you that have watched live. For those of you that are in the group, there are sheets below for you to work through some of these things and to help you with your emotional recovery. And I'll put a link to some books and some quizzes and stuff that will help you as well. Take care, everyone. Speak soon. Bye-bye.